Welcome once again to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis show, and on this platform we put Ghana first. I'm Samson Ladia Yenini, and your views and your comments are welcome. 1422. You can also post your comments on our Facebook wall, and we'll share them with the rest of the world. You can send me an email to newsfile@myjoyonline.com. We have a number of issues that we are going to look at, but first of all, I've got the Chief Executive Officer of the National Petroleum Authority, that's the NPA. Its boss is here. Moses Asaga, you know him very well. He's been in the forefront of economic matters and has been a minister in charge of water resources and employment and so on. Yes, Finance. He's been Deputy Minister of Finance. He has been MP for NAFDAM for a long time until recently, right?
Yes, for 16 years.
For 16 good years. Good morning and welcome to Newsfile.
Thank you very much.
Very good to have you. And I'm just reading this morning in the Daily Graphic about, you know, the intensity of load management. And of course, people are watching, and what they are very much interested in is to know, first of all, where we are with the solution to the fuel shortage. Are we out of it?
Well, I think that we have recovered tremendously, and availability has improved dramatically. At the time there was the shortage, availability in Accra was only 11%. Now we have almost come up to 60% availability, and then we are continuing to discharge more and more. So as we sit here right now at the bus terminal and also at a fuel trade depot, there are discharges coming on.
You talk about 60% availability. That's not good enough.
Well, it's good because
between a period of, we've done almost a week now since the shortage, we were hit by the shortage.
Yes, you know that when we were hit by the shortage, it came at a weekend. That was a Friday.
Right.
And then the banks were supposed to open the LCs for the bulk distribution companies. And you know, once it is a weekend, the only effective date for the LCs to be open would have been Monday. Yes, and once you open LCs on Monday, then you start discharging the products from Tuesday.
Right. So when are we expecting to have 100%?
Well, there's no system that is always 100%. When we talk of availability, a good availability is always around 85%. 85%.
Yeah. So we can expect that by when?
Well, I think that by Wednesday we should be hitting the 80-85% availability of fuel.
So there's no need for the panic buying?
No, I think that panic buying was very speculative, and I think that we shouldn't have come to that stage. But also the panic buying was motivated by the speculation that fuel prices were going to increase. So people bought more than they normally would have bought. Okay. And that created the shortage.
Okay. The NPA has announced through Mr. Kasambata and others that there's not going to be any increments or hikes immediately, at least the next 2 weeks or so. We'll deal with that issue. But you say that the panic buying was brought about by this particular speculation. Now, the question is, how did we get to where we got to?
Yes, I think that the whole problem was about liquidity in the system for the bulk distribution companies. Because as you know, importation of petroleum products have been deregulated. So it is the private sector that is actually managing it. It's not like it's a government agency like in the past when GNPC and Tema Oil Refinery used to supply us with the products. About 80% of the deficit that Tema Oil Refinery cannot provide is being provided by private companies, whom we call bulk distribution companies.
Right.
And they are into business to make profit. They are into business to make sure that they continuously will recycle their cash and buy in more products.
So how have we solved their problem so that we don't get back to this situation?
Yes,
government owed them in excess of some $4 million, right? And government made payment of about $1 million, a little over $1 million out of that.
Yes, I'm still developing the point. that how did we come to this situation? We came to this situation because government in the last 2-3 years have been subsidizing the ex-pump price. And when government is subsidizing, government is supposed to be paying the bulk distribution companies the subsidies that it has accrued.
Right.
That has not been well managed because of the difficulties. But government had always tried to show a human face by saying, look, we would absorb the difference and make sure that Ghanaians get the price for fuel at a reasonable and moderately priced. But I think that the accumulation increased almost to 270 million Ghana cedis. As a result of that, there was illiquidity in the banks because the BDCs didn't have cedis to change into dollars. And even where they had the cedis, they could not also get the dollars. And bringing in fuel, you normally keep them in depots. Not until the LC is opened, it's as if it is in a bonded warehouse. It will not be discharged. And that caused that particular shortage.
Okay.
It wasn't like it was an exogenous factor or an international factor.
So we avoid that, getting into that situation again. I asked the question, so government made some part payments. That was just about less than a quarter or so of what they are owed. So is that all of it, or more is being paid?
Well, government would, after getting a breather, would want to continue to defray the arrears on subsidies and then forex losses. But I think going into the future, Ghanaians, we need to look at whether we prefer subsidies with this kind of occasional shortages, or we want to pay moderate prices and get it regularly. And if you look at the history and performance of the NPA, we have always made fuel available on the market, and I think that our success and availability record is about 80 to 90%, that every time you get fuel on the market, except occasional hiccups.
We'll talk
like
about the subsidies, but there are those who say, who have a suspicion that it is not true that the reasons you have given as being the cause of the shortage are really true, are the genuine reasons, but that this was fake. This was intentional and intended to provoke a discussion on the subsidies.
Well, I think that subsidy discussions have always been on the table at any time, every year. So it isn't really because of we wanting it now. That's why the shortage occurred. We've been given the warning signals in the last 6 months, 3 months, 2 months that, look, if we continue with the shortage of liquidity for the BDCs, this is what is likely to happen. And once we didn't respond to it by paying them their arrears, it did come to happen.
So you're saying emphatically that it wasn't an artificial shortage created to be able to provoke a debate about subsidies?
Not at all.
Or to talk about the need to, increase the prices. Now, if that is the case, how do you respond to the claim about how you appear to, miraculously commandeer how many, tanks of fuel within that short period, and all the holiday period, bring all of them into town?
Yes, like I was saying, when there is shortage as a result of external factors like the weather, movement of ships, inability of refineries in Northwest Europe to produce, then when there's a shortage, it takes you time to be able to fix it. But as I said, this one, the products were in tank. And when we say in tank, it means they are inside Ghana, but just that they are in their bonded warehouses, ready for LCs to be opened, and then they would also unlock the tanks.
I see it's like the Black Stars holding us to ransom. Pay us or we'll not get on the field, but they are in Brazil anyway.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah. So talk about subsidies. So you're saying that this is the time to now bite the bullet, isn't it?
Yes.
And what are you looking at?
Well, I think that NPA, we have always been coming out with our calculations. Our calculation is a model. It just talks about price build-up, right from the refinery abroad, freight, ex-refinery price, taxes that have been put on it, margins for those who are in the business, and you come with a price. So that is easy to calculate. Now, when you come with your price, you'll be able to know that if we don't buy it at that price, but we buy it at a different price, we are able to determine the subsidies involved. So if you take, for example, June 16th to today, because we did not increase and we remain flat, the subsidy on premium is 36 million Ghana cedis. And then the subsidy on gas oil, which is diesel, is 38 million Ghana cedis. So if you add for product by product, for just this particular period that we did not increase, government subsidy is 87.3 million Ghana cedis.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
But the question others will ask is that this thing you talk about, subsidy, it's not real subsidy, because the money that is used to pay for it is the taxpayers' money anyway.
Yeah,
the tax is on the product.
Yes, the tax is on the product, but you ask how much tax is on the product is 7.8%. And if you go to Kuala to buy things, you pay 17.5%, and you don't complain about that one. So you are paying 7.8% on tax, and that is all. In the UK, it's 60% tax on petrol.
Some say this is a lazy approach, that you are refusing to think outside of the box and be creative and bring out solutions. If your job is simply to get into that outfit and remove subsidies and increase prices, then anybody at all can do that job.
Yeah, because they are ignorant about the activities of NPA. NPA, among other things, first of all, we have to study the international market to know price movement. So we have a research department that does that on a minute-by-minute basis. We have a department that have to track all the ships that are going to bring petroleum products into the country. We also have a department where when the ship docks, we will be the first point of contact to make sure that we test the quality of the products. And if you are off spec, you are returned to your destination. Apart from that, we also overlook anchorage. We have only one anchorage infrastructure in Ghana, one for crude oil and one for petroleum products. So we have what we call a laycan. A laycan is a schedule to make sure that you don't get two ships coming at the same time to berth. Because if they do that and one's time is wasted, you have to pay demurrage. So we do the calculations of the demurrage. After that, the MPA at the same time would make sure that all the products are discharged to the depots. So we supervise the depots and make sure that management of the depots are in order. Apart from that, we have 20 bulk distribution companies. We supervise them. We look at their investments. We look at their import schedules to make sure there's regular supply of products. We have about 170 oil marketing companies. I mean, the types like Shell, Allied Oil. We have to be inspecting them. We have 2,600 retail outlets in Ghana, and we have to go around each of these filling stations to make sure that if they are selling diesel, it is diesel. If they are selling petrol, it is petrol, and that they will not do adulteration. We also go around to make sure that the pumps and the calibration, if you say you are buying 1 gallon petrol, you are actually being given 1 gallon petrol. We have other projects like what we call the petroleum product marking scheme. That one, before we introduce it, there was a lot of adulteration. You go and buy petrol and it's a mixture of kerosene and diesel, and therefore it hurts your engine. Because we introduced that, the failure rate used to be almost 32% in terms of adulteration. Today we have only 2% in terms of failure rate. Previously, we also noticed that when you are sending products from Tema, you have to have your volumes, then you have to also have your freight charges. A lot of the tracking companies used to cheat on government because you pick a product from Accra and you say you are going to Paga. Meanwhile, you go and discharge it in Kumasi and you are claiming Paga freight. So we have also introduced what we call the BRV tracking system, what it does is that it's able to measure your volume. As you move, we are seeing you where your track is at any particular time and the volumes. And this
ultimately, what is the benefit to the consumer? That's the point.
Yeah, the benefit to the consumer is that you get quality products, you get your products at the right time.
Right, but you're saying that we should be preparing to look, critically at the question of subsidies and the need to remove it. How do you want that discussion to be had?
Well, I think that price build-up is just about 1/20th of the total activities of NPA. NPA, the kind of staff we have there are all specialists. We have petroleum engineers, chemical engineers, physicists, electromagnetic engineers. We have economists, we have financial experts who do all this work. So NPA is not just a regulator like a policeman stopping cars on the road, So regarding the subsidy, it's because we have studied the pricing. We have looked at what the right price is supposed to be. So for example, at the time that we're quoting 2 cedis 73 pesos per liter, it's supposed to be 3 cedis 31 pesos. So if you do the deduction, it means there's a subsidy of almost 30 pesos on each liter that you take. We are there to just advise consumers and the public and then government.
I see. So the question I was really asking is, how should that discussion be had? Because we have heard you say this is not the first time that we should consider that discussion of the removal of subsidies, and over the years it comes up. How is it supposed to start? How is it supposed to be done?
I think that we have started it, and me sitting here is part of the sensitization. In the last 2 weeks, NPA have done a lot of sensitization. We've been to Ashanti region and to other regions, and the feedback we are getting is that, look, we must pay realistic price for fuel because it's not a cheap commodity. Like I was making an analogy, you go to Kuala and you buy a bottle of water for 3 cedis. Meanwhile, we buy the same a liter for 2 cedis 73 pesos. Meanwhile, to get a gallon of oil, the investment involved in it is too much. The processes, here we are as Ghana, you first do exploration. To drill one exploration well is $100 million. You do development of wells, you produce the crude oil, you send the crude oil to refineries, the refineries process the oil, it is brought back by freight into the country, and all the value chain processes that I had already indicated, and you want to take it for free at subsidized prices. Yes, every government and its ideology. The NDC have always thought that they are a social democratic party, and therefore they should try to subsidize. But times have changed, and you can no longer bear the subsidies.
I wanted to interrupt you when you said you want to take it for free, because, I mean, the argument also holds that you cannot really say exactly that it is subsidy. It's government that's paying for anything, really, because it's taking the money from the taxpayer anyway to take care of it. But the question I wanted to find out now is that, so now government has a policy to remove the subsidies, and so the sensitization has begun.
Yeah.
What are the timelines we are looking at?
Well, the timelines would depend on the feedback that we get from the consumers. If the feedback comes very quickly and it shows a consensus, then we'll try to implement. And implementation too can be gradual. You may not be able to remove subsidies completely, but you can graduate it such that the impact is not felt too much.
But you may have some rough idea as to when you expect to be able to know the aggregate of feedback you have had and how you want to deal with it.
Well, as far as Ashanti region is concerned, we've had a very positive feedback. People think that, look, let's pay realistic price and have the product on the market.
And when you say people, who are you referring to? The ordinary Ghanaian who buys the fuel says it's okay for us to remove the subsidies?
Yeah, motorists and car owners and business people in Ashanti are quite proactive.
I see.
Yes.
Where else have you?
Well, we've done it in Greater Accra, and I remember the day that there was fuel shortage and people were at the airport Shell and City FM was interviewing them. I told City FM that, look, your interview is biased. You haven't asked any of the people that, now that you have seen that fuel is a precious commodity, what is your idea about pricing? The first three people, everybody says, please let them increase and let's pay realistic prices so that we can have it, because it's affecting our business. Some people could not do business.
So you have an idea now.
Yeah.
You have an idea now from where you sit and the work that you have done that people are willing to pay. So when are you looking forward to? Will it take legislative processes or simply some sort of directive from the NPA to kick in?
Yes, we still want to discuss with other stakeholders and in particular the TUC. So we are yet to meet the TUC leadership to discuss with them. We also want to meet GPRTU to also discuss with them because it affects transport fares. Once we collate all those, then we are in a better position to make a recommendation.
We should be done with that before this year closes?
Oh yes, definitely. It has to be done before this year closes.
And you are firm in your mind that we are likely to start on a gradual basis of the removal of subsidies?
Yes, yes.
And that should kick into operation sometime start of the year or next year?
Well, within this year, but not until I complete the sensitization and all the consultations. We cannot have a firm time, but again it depends on government finances, because it is government that have asked for subsidy and they have been supporting Ghanaians to pay less than they should have been paying. So again, they say the one who pays the piper, he calls the tune.
Correct.
So now the government is, look, this is the subsidies, can you bear it? If they say the budget can bear it, fine, but we will always do our technical work in terms of pricing.
I see. There are those who say maybe this will be the very bad time to look at this question of subsidies, removing them, because we are very much aware. Everybody has noticed that the economy is in some difficulty, and every home is had to, cough up a bit more to be able to keep body and soul together.
Yeah, I think the government have always been very sensitive to that, and that is why probably it has taken us time, and government have not been able to cut back subsidies, because government knows that there are economic difficulties. But as I always say, these economic difficulties are a global economic
Okay, we're running out of time, but tell me, are we going to see any hikes in the tariff soon?
Well, as I said, because we are still doing the consultation, I cannot give a date when I haven't yet met TUC and other think tanks for us to discuss it.
No, I'm talking about the normal regime in which the deregulation process is going on. Automatic, is it adjustment formula is being implemented. Are we expected to see any hikes soon?
Well, if there will be hikes, it will be a gradual one. It won't be a one-time shot on the arm. Yes.
And it will come around when?
Well, we are looking within the remainder of the year. It can be the third quarter or fourth quarter. Yes.
Right. Again, there's this very, interesting matter that came up during my discussion last time when we were dealing with this issue, and I want you to clear it with us before we go. We'll talk about your 63,000 monthly rental, and people say that is absurd because it can make you landlords. Rather, you are being tenants. But government, when government says it has released strategic reserves, there are those who say there are no strategic reserves. The last time that we had anything in bursts, tanks around the country, the last time we had them was 2008. And what was in that was used up in 2009. So when you say strategic reserves have been released, What exactly are we talking about?
Well, this is a bust activity, and I will not be able to comment because I don't know their reserves. Yeah.
Okay. And how do you also respond to the criticisms that you have suffered? You've come under quite a mounting of that. 63,000 monthly rental for your offices. That's absurd.
So when you say the criticism, is it an individual criticism to Moses Asare as chief executive or MPA as an institution?
The groundswell of public opinion that whoever approved such a tenancy, didn't do a good job for this country.
Well, first of all, when you are a chief executive, you must take responsibility for everything that happens in your institution. But again, facts must also come out. I have to put on record that these rental negotiations were done before I resumed office. And
you didn't become aware of it when you got in, and you didn't find it, quite absurd?
Well, so let me just make the point. It was negotiated. They came to $23 per meter squared, which is the measurement the real estate and developers would always use. They compared it with other facilities, and those facilities had a range of from $40 to about $30 per meter squared. So this was the cheapest that they had to choose. But when Ghanaians are talking...
do you agree with that? That this was the cheapest that you could find in town?
Yes, it depends on what you want and the location. Because when you say cheapest in town, you don't expect MPA to go and be located...
So you have received orders from above to make sure that you don't renew that tenancy.
Yes, but not renewing...
That's a clear indication that it was wrong. You don't have to do that.
It wasn't wrong because we looked at the market, and people must go into the market and look at comparable institutions, the kind of facilities they are in, and whether they are paying less than $23 per meter squared.
Some say the MPA shouldn't be in the middle of town, really.
Where should it
go
be?
Somewhere in the outskirts of town, get a cheaper, property.
Yeah, because MPA is supposed to be very close to government and very close to the Ministry of Energy.
Physically.
And very close to all those that it is regulating. So it should be very equidistant to all its stakeholders.
Okay. Moses Asare, the MPA boss, good morning. Thank you very much for this morning.
Thank you.
Good having you.
So we'll meet in Bolga and Pito.
Thank you very much. Good. That's been Moses Asare, who is in charge of the NPA, and you've heard him. Quite a number of issues, very straightforward and clear on what you should be expecting. And of course, the promise that we won't get to the fuel shortages any longer. And more importantly, if we are ready to pay for the realistic prices. Remove the subsidies. And there's a policy that's being rolled out gradually. We'll be right back after this break. All right. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, and this is your most authoritative news analysis show. And just a while ago, the first 30 minutes of it, we have been talking about fuel, the fuel shortage, how it came about, and then how we're going to get out of it permanently. And like you heard, straightforward. There's going to be removal of subsidies. But that's also a pending meeting with groups like the TUC and those who are at the forefront of transportation. Then after that, we'll see how things will go. We'll be talking about the Occupy Flagstaff House. And I asked the question, they may not have had the opportunity to occupy that precinct, the particular place. They got to Afrikiko, that's just very close to the place, isn't it? But even though they may not have occupied that place, can we say that they have not occupied the minds of the president and government? And again, we'll look at the GFA, the Ministry of Youth and Sports, and all the parties that played a role in what many people are referring to as a shambolic appearance at Brazil. You may have also heard about the loan that's been taken for, improvement of secondary schools, but there's a component that is supposed to go for sanitary pads for the girls. The last time I checked, I think that's something about gender sensitive budgeting or so. Let's see how all of that goes, whether the media was just rash and gullible and fell for the thing that came out of Parliament saying it was completely wrong and should not be done. And finally, we'll be looking at the coalition of civil society organizations that are leading the crusade against what appears is a cabinet-controlled constitution review process. And some professors are saying, law professors are saying that if it continues in the manner that it is presently, it may just become a complete waste, because some people might take up a suit in the Supreme Court and the whole process will be struck down as a nullity. We don't want to go there because we have expended as much as $6.7 million into that particular project, isn't it? Okay, thank you very much for joining us now. My guests are seated. I have Abdul Malik Kwekubaka Jr., who is the regular panelist and the editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. We have Dr. Emmanuel Akwete, who is the executive secretary of the director, correct? Executive director of the IDEC. Thank you very much. They are at the forefront of ensuring that the constitution review process goes in a manner that will be beneficial to all of us in the end. Abraham Amaliba, he is a law lecturer. He is also with the NDC as a private practitioner. Abi, good morning and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, we have also been joined by Barima Osei Asare. He's a business consultant. He's a former executive director of the Dankwa Institute. Good morning and welcome, Gabi.
Morning.
Thank you very much. Now, if I can pick just 2 minutes each from all of you, if you manage to listen to Moses Asaga, very clearly there's a policy to seek to take away subsidies, and that is the permanent way to avoid the fuel shortages that we have encountered over time. Gabi.
I think what we're subsidizing now is really our inability to stabilize the city. I think really that is what we are subsidizing, because the changes in the fuel prices are actually triggered not by the fact that crude oil prices are high, but because the city keeps dropping to the dollar, and we need dollars to go import. So I think I am not for subsidies, because I think really if you look at some work done globally by the IMF, they found out that 20%, the subsidies benefit 20% of the richest 6 times more than 20% of the poorest. So it's indiscriminatory, and it's money that can be used elsewhere. So I am not for subsidies when it comes to fuel. I think really it's an inefficient and unfair use of limited public resources.
Right.
But really the difficulties we have now is to do with our inability to stabilize our city. So we are subsidizing our incompetence in terms of how...
The government has been very efficient at managing the solution to the shortage that we encountered, right?
It's been inefficient in managing its inefficiency. It's been efficient in managing its inefficiency. I think that's basically what you're telling me.
Okay, Abi.
Yes.
Remove the subsidies, and then we kiss the fuel shortages goodbye.
Basically, if we've gotten to the breaking point, and we have gotten to this point, what I would describe as our weight point, we need to factor in the issue of the downtrodden, the poor of the poorest in society. How will the removal of subsidies affect them? Is there a safety net? So whilst we're looking at removal of subsidies, let's also look at those at the end of the chain. How do we ensure that they are also cushioned? So for me, that would be my call, that would be my advocacy, and that we have gotten to this point because we are no longer capable of subsidizing, but we should also understand that there are those who are at the tail end who need to be cushioned.
So your point is?
My point is subsidize, but again,
So you are
as a
for
government, we need to understand that we belong to the Social Democratic Party. We should have a system that will cushion the poor of the poorest in society.
So you are for subsidies.
Okay. Let's hope that the NPA does not come into any clash with the government as far as this issue is concerned. Dr. Kwete, what do you say?
I think if we remove subsidy and that raises the price of fuel, I'll be concerned about how the poor, because it affects all aspects. It has
Right.
multiplier effects, transportation, economic activity,
It
and all
affects
that.
everything.
Doomsaw age, you subsidize Doomsaw with fuel, so it becomes an issue, and these are difficult times. So, but I'll be more interested in how the poor could be, and their economic activities could be safeguarded. So, could we discriminate? Is there a way in which you would target the group that really needs some support? I don't know the form in which it will take, but I think it could have effects, uneven effects, and those who would suffer most are probably more than the 20% Gabi was referring to. So how do we deal with that? And I think that is important.
Okay, and obviously maybe Gabi's statistics that he's using is not relevant to the Ghanaian situation.
I think it might be higher. I think it might be higher in the Ghanaian situation because the World Bank was looking at it globally.
Okay.
And these are difficult economic times. So right. I think if you remove subsidy without taking care of or thinking about the safety net and the categories that would come in and so on, that would be difficult. If you're removing it, I mean, if it's Kwekubako, it would have, I think that's okay. Then they should remove it rapidly. but if it's good, no, Gabi. I mean, for Gabi, there's no reason why it should subsidize Gabi.
The fundamental point is that subsidies were somehow removed, okay, and they had to bring the subsidies back. But it's not because crude oil prices have shot up. In fact, they've actually gone down.
Okay,
but it's because, yes, so we are not actually managing our economy well.
That's what you're saying.
To me, that's the point. So
the social
when you mention the poor thing, the poor actually, they get poorer if you are not managing your economy well. So subsidy is just, if you like, the consequence of the poor mismanagement.
Koko, there are those who say this
actually,
approach...
mismanagement is not poor. It's actually quite excellent.
There are those who say this approach is a lazy approach. It's the approach that you don't need to think as a leader.
Well. I'm not sure I really even understand what is going on. Not too long ago, the same people who today are talking about subsidies and the need to remove subsidies told us there were no subsidies. That's what they told us. Now, admittedly, they are telling us we have subsidies.
Right.
And that subsidies are becoming more of a burden for the economy, so ought to be removed. Well, I wouldn't pretend to understand the economics of this matter. But you see, the policy we adopted, the deregulation policy, the logic of it was eventually to take away any subsidy, if you follow it to a strict logical conclusion. Clearly, we haven't been able to manage that process, and it is because of the kind of political economy that we operate in this part of the world. I'm not sure, and Gabi is making analysis of the fact that the poor maybe don't benefit so greatly from subsidies. I'm not too sure about that. You understand? The increases in fuel cuts across the social divide.
Okay.
It has a ripple effect.
Correct.
And so I'm not too sure how that cannot affect the poor. Look at the level of incomes, okay, the standard of living and all the rest. I have a funny feeling that it's a minefield that will be entering into.
Okay.
It benefits the rich more because they use fuel more than the poor. That's the point I'm making.
Okay, that's
I didn't say
interesting.
it didn't affect
but
them.
it
benefits
could
them.
also adversely impact on the standard of living of the poor.
Sure.
It could.
But
it could also even increase cost of production of the manufacturing or industrial sector. And they would then actually pass it on. That's what I'm looking for.
The point is, we've had this issue because of the dollar and the cedi.
Yes,
it has nothing to do with crude oil.
It's just
so when you keep looking at the subsidies, government was forced to subsidize because it couldn't manage the cedi.
Yes, I agree. Even with the utility tariff, the increment.
So if you don't manage the cedi, are we going to continue subsidizing because we can't manage the cedi?
That's why I said political economy. The implications are wide. It comes back to management of the economy, the quality of management, if you like, the policy direction and policy credibility, all that.
And we're using the poor as an excuse.
Yes, but when due to the mismanagement,
you are using them as an excuse for your incompetence. That's basically what it is. You are not able because look.
You know what? We can establish the point Gabi is making can be established beyond doubt. But I'm saying that when you have proceeded to implement removal of subsidies as a policy, what are its implications for the poor?
Okay.
I am of the opinion that the poor will suffer more.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not saying they will suffer more. I'm talking